here is our agenda. The only addition to our agenda in terms of new material, it's not new material, but new something to do is this quiz down here. I tried to make it a nice short quiz, so it's 5 questions long, and it's just like yesterday's assignment. So I want to go over yesterday's exit ticket problems. That was the problems about getting fractions out of equations, and I just trying to give us every opportunity to get more and more comfortable with that process. And then any questions you have about yesterday's ALEKS assignment, we'll be glad to look at and answer, because that'll just help us make sure we're ready to roll for the 5 questions that are on today's quiz. Does anybody have thoughts or questions at the moment? All right, so here is that example. It says multiplying this equation by what number would eliminate all fractions? And we just have to remember that what fractions really are is a number divided by another number. That's how we can find their decimal form, is take the top number and divide it by the bottom number. So right here, if we can undo divided by 5, because every one of them just has divided by 5. So the opposite of dividing by 5 is to multiply by 5. This one, we don't have to find a common multiple or anything, because all of them just say divided by 5. That means, I'll just show you what would happen if we do that. So this is all about multiplying by 5. However, I realized this morning that even though yesterday morning I tried to make sure there wasn't more than one correct answer, this is the correct answer. However, this also would work just fine, so it should have been a correct answer for anybody that chose it. You could multiply all those by 10, because that is a multiple of 5. Anyway, so here we go. Remember, this and this are going to cancel out. Multiplying by 5, dividing by 5, they cancel each other out. Really what it does is it results in a 1, but I just like to think of it as they canceled out. And so what's left from this first part is the numerator and the x, which technically would be in the numerator, because that x, anytime we don't have a fraction, we can make it a fraction by putting it over 1. So that x is in the numerator, even though it doesn't appear that way. And then we have plus, the only thing remaining from the 8/5 is the 8. The only thing remaining from the 14/5 is the 14. There's the new equation. Did not have to find that equation, just wanted to point out that's what would have resulted when we multiplied by that 5. Okay. Does everybody see that if we had multiplied by the 10, all that it would have done is made every one of those numbers twice as big? If I had multiplied by 10, I would have had 2x plus 16 plus 28. That equation would result in the exact same answer that the one that you're looking at would have. All right, here we have 2 different numbers in the denominator, so we just got to make sure we find a common multiple. We got 10 and we got 5 going on. So we've usually just been coming over here and listing the multiples of 5 and 10 in this case. And so 5, 10, as soon as I get there, I realize, well, 10 is the other number, and so it's a multiple of itself. That's what I'm going to use. But, if we wanted to keep listing multiples, we could. Then over here, we have 10, 20. So we've already got 2 different multiples we could have been using, but I always go for the smallest number I can find to keep life as simple as possible. So here we go. We're going to multiply each one of these by 10. Usually I do 10 parentheses around the whole equation, but right now I'm just trying to save time and show it in a slightly different way, but we're just multiplying every one of these by 10. This guy, they really just cancel out. They become a 1. So I'm not going to bother to write any of that other than what's left over from the numerator and that x that would also technically be in the numerator. The next one, this is a 10 divided by 5 situation. So from this, when we do the 10 divided by the 5, we're going to have a 2 that's being multiplied by anything that's left over, which in this case is an 8. Okay. Please don't hesitate to unmute yourself or in the chat, ask any questions. I'm not seeing the chat at the moment. Yeah, so if there's anything going in the chat, Miss Madden or Mr. Blake can let me know. And then on the last one, we're doing 10 divided by 5 again, which 10 divided by 5 is the number 2. We're multiplying that times the numerator of 14. And so we didn't have to do any of this actual multiplication for this problem, but the new equation that would have resulted if we did it was 3x plus 16 equals 28. The correct answer, well, we just multiplied everything by, was 10. So for number 2, it was a 10. Any questions there? All right. So again, we have two different denominators. One of them is a 4, one of them is a 6. Listing the multiples of 4, I just start with that number and then add 4 more to 8. I get 12. I can keep going. So I'm going to stop because 6 is the first multiple of 6, but then add on to that, we get a 12. So the smallest number that I know is a multiple of both of them is the 12. So when I go to multiply each one of these by 12, again, I didn't actually have to do the multiplication. I've already found the answer and I'm done with this question, but let's just keep taking advantage of the opportunity. So 12 divided by 4, that's what I'm doing right there. And from that, I'll get a 3, but I still have that 5y that we'll multiply that by. Then we have plus. I'll just go ahead and write the 12 times. Oh, no, I won't. Mr. Reed, what are you thinking? This time it's 12 divided by 6, which will leave me with a 2. So if it helps anybody, this was 12 divided by 6 right here, and this was 12 divided by 4. And then the last one, I have another 12 divided by 4. So let's go ahead and write down, after we got the 2, we still have an 11 in the numerator. So we multiply those together. Then on this last one, the 12 divided by 4 is going to give us 3 once again. And so 3 multiplied by the 19. I'm writing quite a bit more out than I normally would at this point, but what's important to me is that you learn the process. Once you learn this process, you can do it way more simply than this. This 3 times 5y gives us 15y. The 2 times 11 gives us 22. And the 3 times 19, that's trying my calculating skills, but I think we get a 57 out of there. So this would have been the new equation. Problem didn't ask for it, but that's what would have been the new equation that we can then solve. Any questions? Okay, this one says, what would the new equation be if we multiply by 4? So that means we got to multiply every term in the equation by 4. When I do that, the nice thing is 2 of the terms, it's just going to completely cancel out the 4. 4 divided by 4 leaves us with a 1, which isn't going to change anything. But I'll go ahead and bring the 1 that was in the numerator and the x down. Then we have plus. We're going to have a 4 times 3 makes 12. And that's going to be equal to, again, these two guys are going to cancel each other out. Multiplying by 4, dividing by 4, bye-bye. Leaves us with only the number 7 that was in the numerator. So the simplest way to write that would be x plus 12 equals 7, because we know 1x and just an x by itself, same thing. Any questions?
Mr. Reed, I have a question on, and I forgot to ask you on the first one because I was checking cameras. When you had the 2 answers, if they were taking the air test and they only chose a 10 or the 5, will they only get half credit, or do they have to choose both in order to get the answer correctly on the air test?
This question was written by Mr. Reed, and I promise I haven't written any of the air test questions. This was Mr. Reed's mistake. So,
but do you know what would happen if that were a question on the air test, if something like that would ever happen?
This is only true in math. But first of all, if this was air test and there was multiple answers, they would say something like pick all of the correct answers here.
Okay.
Okay, but if we only picked one of the two, we would get no credit.
Hmm.
Ridiculous. Math is the only subject that treats it that way, but in multi-part questions on the OST for algebra or any math class, but algebra is the only one that we have an OST for anymore. If you get part of a problem wrong, you get 0 credit for the whole problem. It's very ridiculous.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you for asking. All right. So any questions out there? Questions are a wonderful thing. We just keep clearing stuff up. I'll remind people that the two problems we did yesterday were this one and this one. Those are two story problems where we're reading the story problem. The big thing that we tried to really make important yesterday is that word each tells us what that number is going to go in front of the variable. So when we see each for both of those problems, is right down here, it's $7 each. This problem, the first one, happened to be a subtraction problem. So that 5 that had each by it goes in front of the B. And down here, the 7, it was a plus problem, and the 7 goes in front of the W. If we didn't get anything else out of yesterday, that would be a good thing to know. But do we have any questions? Does anybody have a problem from yesterday's assignment that you'd like to take a look at? Any of that good stuff?